Hey guys, and we're back with another true crime murder mystery. And this one is not for the faint of heart. So I would say, as usual, viewer discretion is advised. Alright, before we get into this story, please leave a like for the video and consider subscribing to the channel. This is about the Harver House murders, the rituals of Luther Miles. Creepy story. I'm going to tell you that right now. Alright, Luther Miles was born on October 12th, 1964. Same year as my parents. Creepy. In Pine Hollow, Missouri. Yes, I know we just did a story about Pine Hollow, West Virginia, but this is Pine Hollow, Missouri. And it's a place as quiet as it was haunted by forgotten tragedies. Luther's mother, Miriam, was a devoutly religious woman. She was obsessed with Old Testament prophecy and ritual purification. And his father, Elijah, was a very hard man. He was cold, secretive, and cruel to the children. From age 6, Luther was forced to memorize and recite passages from a handwritten family Bible that did not have the traditional Bible verses in them. They had a bunch of scriptures and verses about feeding the land and chosen a bone. Just really odd things that you wouldn't find in the normal Bible. So at age 9, Luther got suspended from school for drawing a mural in what they thought was human blood, but later identified as chicken blood, across the back of a barn outside of school. The drawing was circular, intricate, and disturbingly precise. Neighbors began to whisper after his livestock. They started dying in very bizarre ways. Goats eviscerated but not eaten. Pigs were drained of blood, but no other injuries that were noticeable. By the time Luther was 16, he was spending entire nights in the forest. Locals say they could hear chanting and echoing through the pines, always ending with what sounded like one single scream. In 1982, this is creepy because that's the year I was born. Okay, 3 months after Luther's 18th birthday, his entire family vanished. The house went silent. No calls, no movement, no nothing. When police came to investigate, they found blood in the crawl space and smell they could not identify. No bodies, no evidence of any kind of crime, just Luther sitting alone at the kitchen table, carving symbols into his forearm with a fork. He told the sheriff, "They went under, they were chosen, the land asked, and I obeyed." The town of Pine Hollow did not forget, but it didn't speak either. And so for 21 years, Luther Miles lived alone in the house that became known only as the Harver House. So, what no one knew was that Luther had just begun to feed it. It began officially in the summer of 1990, but Pine Hollow residents would later say that it felt long before that. The first one to vanish, his name was Caleb Jensen. He was only 19 years old. He was a musician, and he was hiking alone down Route 7 past the edge of Luther Miles' property. Sadly, he would not be seen again. 3 days later, his backpack was found by the riverbank, slashed open completely. Inside a side pocket was a small figurine made of sticks and hair bound by red thread. In 1992, the next missing person, Lisa Garver, disappeared. A 23-year-old waitress with dreams of leaving town for good. Haven't we all been there? Her car was discovered still running on the shoulder of a country road, 6, door ajar, headlights still on. Witnesses recalled a figure standing in the woods just past the tree line. Said he was tall, unmoving, and like shadowy. It was too dark to see anything. When police investigated, they found bare footprints leading to the Miles farm, but no body. So again, they did nothing. By 1995, 4 more people would vanish, all adults, all alone, and each disappearance occurring during a new moon. So each one within walking distance of the Harver House, each one during a new moon. So locals began calling it a curse. Children wore bells around their necks, told by their parents it would ward off anything that walked there. talking about paranormal things. Sheriff Don Haskins made a quiet visit to Luther Miles in the spring of 1997. He found dark fluid on shelves, chicken bones laid in ritualistic patterns, and the walls smeared all over with what looked like scripture. But during the encounter, he said, "There's more to feed. I'm the only hand. Still without bodies, no arrest could be made." They suspected him. They really felt he was involved. If not, he did the murders. But they couldn't arrest him yet. Didn't have enough evidence. And the town of Pine Hollow was forced to live under a slow, grounding dread that bled into every tree, every silence, every full moon that passed without closure. Inside his house, a frantic 911 call came, and it was from a driver on Route 7. He nearly hit a bloody girl stumbling down the road. She was barefoot, covered in bruises, and mumbling something about a cellar and hooks from the cellar. That girl was Mandy Childs, and she had just escaped hell, literally. Police followed her blood trail 3 miles back through the woods to the front steps of the Harver House. The exterior was crumbling. Ivy overtook the siding. The front door was ajar. Inside, the air was thick with a stench that made even the sheriff retch. Made everyone sick. It was a horrible smell. Just the hum of something electrical they could hear deeper inside. They followed it to the dining room, where a rug had clearly been dragged aside and something was hiding under it. When they opened it, they found a ladder descending into darkness. What they discovered beneath would traumatize even seasoned investigators. The basement, however, was not a storage area. It was a ritual chamber. Symbols were painted in blood across walls. Bones were stacked in a wheel-like pattern on the dirt floor. 7 human corpses hung from chains, bolted into the ceiling. They were skinned, drained, preserved, and in a mixture of bleach and salt. Hooks were inserted beneath their ribs to hold them in place like grotesque marionettes. I mean, this was horrible, gruesome, horrible crime scene. A stone altar stood at the center. It was blackened with soot and viscera. Animal skulls surrounded its base. One with the larger skull, canine or possibly human, placed at the top like a crown. Behind the altar was a wooden desk, scorched along the edges. Dozens of journals were stacked at the top, each labeled by year and lunar cycle, each containing what would later be described as the ravings of a possessed archivist. One entry in his journal said, "The land eats, the land hungers. I am the only butcher. The harvest must continue. It told me its name today. It is Tharn." Police recovered audio cassettes as well, recordings from the screams of his victims layered with the sound of chanting and what one officer swore was someone speaking backwards. The cellar wasn't a murder site. It was a place of worship, a temple of flesh, made by a man who believed his offerings kept something at bay. Mandy Childs was hospitalized for a few weeks. Her body bore the evidence of torture, starvation, and psychological torment. She testified, and the land spoke through the walls. "He said I was fertilizer." She described cages, recordings, rituals. Luther forced her to watch others die. He made her participate, smearing blood in circles. He believed it was salvation, he told her. She escaped through a rusted drainage tunnel beneath the basement, crawling 3 miles through darkness and filth. Her courage gave her and the police enough evidence that they needed and confirmed their worst fears. So Luther Miles was arrested without resistance. He actually smiled. And in court, he never spoke. He only wrote stuff down. Symbols, names of pages, cryptic references to something called Tharn. Mandy testified. The town just wept. Finally, they fell apart after all these years. The jury convicted him on all counts. 3 months later, Luther died in his cell. Cause was an unknown hemorrhage in his brain. His final note read, "I hear it breathing now. The Harver House was burned to the ground by local vigilantes." That's pretty good. I wouldn't want that anywhere near my town either. And since then, hikers report hearing screams in the woods and a humming sound beneath the soil. No one goes near the ruins, and the land is still feeding, is what the locals say. So that will do it for today's story. If you got something out of today's story, please consider subscribing to the channel and run those likes up for me. You guys have a wonderful, blessed day, and remember, always trust your gut. All right, see you in the next one.